Matteo Tambussi.
Hello, Zach.
Hello, Matteo.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I would like to do a short introduction. Me and Matteo have been friends
Please.
for a long time. He is a phenomenal musician. We met in Berlin, and I had the opportunity to film him and follow him in a hybrid documentary that, God willing, will be done in a few years.
Let's do it.
Yes, and then Matteo, you've since gotten into the Ethereum Foundation and kind of starting to mix technology and music, yes?
Yeah. Well, can you hear me well, first of all?
I can, yes.
Yeah. Right. So I actually started in Berlin as, these side jobs that I used to have, bartendering at night, studio running during the day, and evening you would do some live streams for conferences and stuff. And these conferences happen to be more and more about blockchain. So I was the one deputy to the sound. So I would listen what everyone would say in the mic, and I started taking notes, etc. And that was my introduction to the blockchain. And we were doing that live streams on a protocol called Live Peer, which is about decentralized transcoding. So video live stream, video and audio video live stream without censorship. So without a centralized party that checks what you're streaming and decides to eventually shut you down if you're not being fully compliant on guidelines, etc. So we used to do that already, like using blockchain system, using distributed systems. I currently work for the Ethereum Foundation on an educational program called Ethereum 4. And we basically tackle different communities of same professionals and try to do workshops that address a specific use case. So for lawyers, we do dispute resolutions on the blockchain, for healthcare, medical records on the blockchain, for musicians, royalties, royalty payments on the blockchain. Maybe instead, I had so many slides sets of slides to choose from that eventually I didn't choose. So I would just go through what my personal R&D has been. And it all started with, if I can, yes. Can you see my screen? Right?
Yes.
So it's just a cover, I'm just covering my Medium, where you can find some articles about my own R&D, etc. And the first one, wait, let me check. No, this is something else. Yeah, this is the first one. This is the first attempt that I did, basically. It's a single, and something that led me to do this R&D specifically, I'll tell you what it is about very soon, is the fact that as a musician, I realized very soon that every one of us, if you want to keep like a steady production in terms of albums and EPs per year, you might end up investing between 2 and 5 grand if you stay in the independent range of music production, right? And that is usually money that it will not come back, because you will invest in equipment, softwares, studios, mixing sessions, mastering sessions. Then you might produce some physical items to sell, which have their own cost. And most musicians, they decide to put that album for free or on Spotify, which is like giving it for free to some extent, because they expect a return of investment in terms of live concerts, in terms of live activity. which has, apart from COVID, of course, but live activity has its own budgeting. So you need to think about, gas, accommodation, so blah, blah, blah. So if you produce albums every year, you're basically constantly in red. Your red goes deeper and deeper, unless you do like a big exploit or you manage to sync some songs to, I don't know, a very famous TV series or Netflix series anyway. So the thing that led me to this first Emily open label MVP was exactly that. When I finished this album, I asked myself, okay, if I give it to Spotify right now, I am wasting this money and this time into giving me back some attention, etc. And what do I have? What do I own right now that can be monetized and that can be harnessed as an equity of my production? And that were royalties. I am in possession of 100% of my music royalties. And I found very early that the current system, the current centralized system, does not allow you, musician, to distribute those royalties, to whoever you want. You can do it as a small time basis, but if you want to do it like to anonymous people, etc., there is no platform apart from Ditto. I think right now Ditto allows you to do something like that, but you cannot sell royalties because that would be some sort of, it still has to be regulated, but it would be something like equity funding. So you need, to be compliant. It's called, they might end up being regulated as securities. But anyway, this was an R&D. So basically what I did was finding a dividend contract. A dividend contract is a smart contract that basically emits a certain amount of tokens. So in this case, I created the Emily dividend contract, and I created 1,000 Emily tokens, representing 100% of Emily's royalties. The contract itself is payable, meaning that the contract can store value, can receive Ether and keep it there. And the interesting thing is that if you own a small amount of these tokens, you can go directly to the contract and pull what is your dividend. If you have 200 of these 1,000 of these 1,000 tokens, then you basically have 20% of it, and you can pull every time 20% of what the dividend contract has made so far. So that was my first R&D, and I started distributing these tokens, not by, of course, I gave it to some initial influencers and family and friends in crypto, etc. But most of it, I gave it through Uniswap. So I created a pool on Uniswap, which is DeFi, decentralized finance. Basically, it's a decentralized finance app. I created a pool. I created a pool with a little bit of my Emily token and a little bit of Ether. And by doing so, I allowed everyone to just check my website, go to the pool, and exchange these tokens for Ether. So the more they got these tokens, the more the tokens that I have gain worth. And of course, I eventually redistributed these tokens because I didn't want to end up, in jail for because I'm not regulated as a security yet. Not artist is at the moment. But the whole point was about creating an open label. So why do I need to hunt labels for a place in their artist roster, and then eventually end up there and maybe being forgotten and having to write emails, hey guys, are you looking for gigs? Are you doing this and that? I managed to create basically my own label for a single and have a chat, a Discord server, a chat on Telegram of people who managed to get these tokens. and who wanted this single who had an interest in the single to be streamed, receive more streams on Spotify, etc. Of course, the connection Spotify dividend contract wasn't made yet because Spotify doesn't pay Ethereum. What I did was, for a given set of time, I was basically taking what Spotify was giving me per stream and converting it on Ethereum and sending it to the dividend contract. So that was the first experiment. And again, what I ended up with was an open label. It's a label that is open, depending on whoever owns those tokens, and they might own it at a certain time, but maybe 1 month later they passed it on to someone else. So ownership changes. And I managed to coordinate work with these 20, 30 token holders who were helping me getting the song maybe on some small university radios in New Zealand or Australia or other places around the world. So that was interesting as a first experiment. The second experiment I did was
Matteo,
yeah.
before we go to the second experiment, is it possible for us to hear some of the song? Or all of the song?
Yeah. What do you want, the Spotify link?
You could put a link, or you could even just play a little bit just for us to hear. And then you could.
I prefer to give you
the link.
The link, but I can just give you 1 second. I can just give you the. So if you go here and you go to solo, basically you will find the music there. Otherwise, you can go to this website. There is a video clip, emilythisguy.io, and I think that playing it here would a bit bad in terms of rendition anyway.
Perfect. Okay, now we have it and we can listen ourselves. Awesome. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Thank
you. You're welcome. And the second experiment I did was it was way more complicated than the first one. And it involved basically using NFTs, but a very particular kind of NFT. So usually you know that you have non-fungible tokens, which is either ERC-721 or ERC-1155 contracts. And then you have fungible tokens, can be ERC-20 or ERC-777, etc. So one is basically for custom money, the ERC-20 fungible, and the other is for collectibles or digital items. With this experiment, I tried a new format, which is called item, and you can have a look. This is the website. It's an Italian startup and I'll tell you what it is about this. 1 second. This is item. And what they did basically was merging the two. So you can have an NFT which is liquid. What does it mean? It means that the ownership of the NFT, of the whole NFT, will go to whoever owns the 51%. But you don't need to have the 100% of that item to claim the ownership. You just need 51%. If I own 51% of that item, then the NFT will display on my wallet, on OpenSea, Super Rare, etc. But at the same time, this item is liquid, meaning that it's basically made of fungible little compositing tokens. So I can even own like 0.2% of a given item. And the thing is that by implementing this standard, you can have your NFT showing up. You can trade your NFT on OpenSea and NFT platforms, but at the same time, you can maybe swap part of it on Uniswap or SushiSwap or anyway, DeFi platform, because there's a ERC20 interface. So you have the fungible, non-fungible, which represent a single item, exactly. So basically, that's what I did. I created this ghost truck, which is it's just the name of the composition that I put together. And I also created, I wouldn't go into this whole DeFi mechanism. I would invite you to read the article here, but basically what I created was a farming contract where owners of the NFT, owners of the fungible interface of the NFT, meaning owners of the ERC20 of the NFT, were incentivized to add liquidity to the pool on Uniswap because they would receive more ERC20 of that NFT, and that is called farming. So you stake you stake a little bit of the ERC20 interface of the NFT, a little bit of Ethereum, and you make sure that the farming contract reads that stake, so that the farming contract, which has a barn, let's call it a barn, with deposit like treasury, additional ERC20, slowly releases some rewards to those who helped the liquidity of the NFT going up. Yeah, so that was the second experiment, and the last experiment is we go back to something more easy. And I didn't do this alone. I did this with my dev shop in Turin, which is Turin is our meetup in northern Italy, where with whom we ran an hackathon last year. And since then, we've been doing some R&D around some public goods verticals. And one vertical specifically was creating a non-chain copyright management organization. So you know that you have ASCAP in the US, you have PRS in the UK, you have GEMA in Germany, CI in Italy. These are copyright management organizations. And the thing is that it's very hard for them to sit at the same table and create international standards so that, you know, the copyright process is smooth, etc., because they're so monolithic and so kind of centralized, because they belong to the state to some extent. So in Europe right now we have a directive, which is the Barnier directive, which allows anyone to start their own copyright collecting business. So we tried to give this a try, and we created a smart contract that basically can deposit a piece of intellectual property, like maybe Zach and me, we create a storyline for a documentary, etc. So it's Zach's address, my address. We deposit the narrative somewhere on IPFS, which stands for Interplanetary File System. It's decentralized storage. Me and Zach create a multi-signature wallet. Zach maybe has 60% because he's a script writer. Maybe I did a few ads, so I get 40%. So that multi-sig knows that it has to send Zach 60% of whatever comes in and 40% to me. The multi-sig and the deposit on open storage goes together and make a payable registry contract instance. That means that whoever wants to use this storyline, they can pay a license, and the money will be split among me and Zach. But the interesting thing is that right now you have no way of keeping track of whoever uses your copyright, but going through the tabulate of your CMO if they give you. So it's quite mental to keep track of whoever is using your music, which can be a good resource, right? We implemented a system so that every time someone buys a license, so imagine that you have 4 tiers of license: simple use, synchronization, festival, or I don't know, Spielberg. So you have 4 tiers of license. Depending on what you pay, the contract will give you back a different NFT. And of course, that will also give a reputation scale to your users, to your license purchasers. And that is good, because then you have all the addresses whitelisted, and you can decide at any time, okay, today I'm doing a new release and I'm just allowing people who paid the Steven Spielberg's tier to access it for free. Because you know who received that specific NFT. And that's basically it. Again, you can access the documentation on matlemad.medium.com. There is also the DApp, so you can access it and give it a test on Girly testnet. Of course, it's on GitHub, so if there's any developer wanting to use it for whatever purpose, it's there. And also we used some open source to put it together. So, you know, it's an open source word, just use stuff. I think my speech time is over. If there are any questions, I know that might be many, but, you know.
Yeah, I definitely want to open it up to anyone, but I know I have a lot of questions. And to begin with, is it possible to do a combination of both the tokenization and the copyright?
What do you mean?
So for example, if I were to raise money through tokenization to be able to produce the song, but then at the same time, I want to split the royalties between, maybe there was a songwriter and there were different musicians involved and there was a studio, and then we're going to later even license that song to Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you envision like the tokenization and the kind of copyright royalties that you just talked about, all of that existing in one ecosystem?
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about smart contracts is that they are interoperable, and it's actually pretty easy to call another contract and make sure that a contract below extends the contract before. So I might take a NFT contract and then create a dividend contract which imports the previous contract, or maybe I could create a ERC20 contract that imports. So the great thing about smart contracts is their interoperability features. Right now is mostly at code level, so you might have to spend some time understanding Solidity, but I'm pretty sure that in a couple of years we will have some amazing UX UI where you can just, you know, take a contract, import it here, take this, take that, and there you have your own NFT. I mean, it's already quite easy right now to mint NFTs. It's painless. When I started, we had to go through the code and the deployment. So it's I think it's going to happen very, very fast. That you will manage to do Lego with smart contracts. Yeah. Right.
And then one other question I was curious about, like in terms of the third case study that you showed, who governs something like that?
Right. So that's a good question, because one of the limitations of the Barnier directive in Europe, in order to open the copyright market to multiple parties, many state members said, yeah, we accept this directive, but then they have to be non-profit, because most of the CMOs in Europe are state-owned, so they are theoretically non-profit. Then if they accept bribes, then that's another matter. But yeah, so in our case, we didn't put any ownership. So it's a public good. It's a contract that right now is for testnet, of course. It's not in production, but in the best scenario is being audited, and it's just there as a contract, right? So what it's worth thinking is that there will be at a certain point a DAO governing this contract that might take into consideration authors, so intellectual IP issuers, and license payers at the same time. Also, we don't want this to become a plutocratic scenario where if you have more tokens, you can govern more. So again, things like quadratic voting are very useful. So also voting on Ethereum is interesting because you can program it the way you want. You can say every 10, if you have this much, count one every time you reach 100. So you can actually ponderate, like weighting everyone's voting according to their holdings. So it's just mathematics. And so I would also suggest people to have a look at Radical Markets, which is an incredible by Glenn Whale. I guess that's how it's spelled. Which is about these new systems for governance, for tax income, etc. And not by chance, Radical Markets and Ethereum are like slowly intertwining together. So the one uses quadratic voting or Harberger tax for funding mechanisms is really interesting what is happening. Yeah.
Thank you. I know that right now, as all of this is kind of emerging technology, there's a lot of artists and a lot of musicians who don't understand it and maybe a little bit weary of like, how do they even get started in something like this? So I have kind of a two-sided question. One is, what are the first steps to kind of get involved in this? And two, how close do you think the future is where this just becomes standard practice?
So how to get your hands in the dirt a little bit. Well, first of all, create a MetaMask account. So install MetaMask as an extension on your browser, possibly desktop, because the mobile version of MetaMask is good for a wallet, but it's not good for sending transactions and operating with smart contracts. It's not that optimal. It doesn't have that optimal user experience. And I don't want to do advices for investment, but if you have MetaMask, then you should have some Ethereum to pay transactions. You can either swap it, buy it. You can work for Ethereum. So again, try to look for jobs paid in crypto. That can be useful. There is one thing. I would say go to Remix, remix.ethereum.org, which is the project that I collaborate with. Remix is the IDE, Integrated Development Environment, where you basically write smart contracts, you test them, blah, blah, blah. And if you go to Remix and go to plugins and install Learnith, then you go through, they give you a series of tasks to accomplish in order to start getting started with Solidity smart contracts and understanding the Lego system in. You don't have to be able to write contracts in order to understand smart contracts. So this is very important. You can also be very useful, and you can heighten your skill set by being able to read Solidity and knowing what a contract is doing and not. So
awesome.
yeah, and the second question was I forgot.
How close are we to this just becoming standard practice?
I don't know. It might take up to, I think 2025 is a good guess.
Okay.
To like considering Zuckerberg rebranding Facebook Meta, I think that something might be happening very soon. But again, it's a slow process. It will take some years before you get to everyone. But you know that right now the innovation rate is like going so fast that it's going back in time. Yeah.
Basically, if there's any kids in high school listening to this, get ready. And then I want to thank you, and I know we're going right into the next speaker, but just before we finish, because it is being recorded and there will be people watching it later, for musicians, but you also said lawyers or other people who are interested in getting started, that you at the Ethereum Foundation, there are classes or courses or ways that they can work with you to develop these tools?
Well, what we do is, if you have a community, if you have, say, a collective, better if localized, because I think that crypto cities is the new trend. Somehow we want to focus impact on closed environments, etc. So if you have a community and you would love to get a workshop on your vertical, just contact us on Ethereum 4.eth.link. I think that's it. By the way, this is an unstoppable website because it operates on IPFS, so no one can put it down. There's a form. Just write us a message, say, hey, I run this, I would love this, leave us your contacts, we'll call you back. And usually we do these 2 days workshops where we go through theory on your vertical, say photography, and we go over photographies and NFTs possibly, and how to create something like that. And the second day we would do mostly demos. So we go together through Solidity and some tools that might help you achieve what you want. We don't do project development for you, but if you have budget and if you have friends, developers, we might give you all the resources you need to do it. Awesome.
We've gone a little over time, but I want to thank you so much for sharing that information with us. And I'm guessing you'll be inspiring musicians to go out and explore some of those things that you were talking about today.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Zach. I'm very, very happy to be joining today. Yes.